Hi everyone, my name is Monique.
And I'm Naveen from Before You Play.
And we are back with another episode of Let's Talk Board Games, where we talk about a few games that we've been playing recently and how we feel about them.
Yes, today we have 4 games that we're going to be talking about, 3 of which came out last year, one of which is fairly new, came out earlier this year.
Right.
And so we've played all these several times, and now we want to talk about them.
Yeah, a few of them are actually 2-player only games.
Yep.
So we do have some small box 2-player only games, followed by a nice grander Euro. But before we get into the games, today's episode is kindly sponsored by Sordain Publishing for their new game called Weretigers that is coming to Kickstarter tomorrow. Weretigers is a fast-paced, fully cooperative dice defense game that features Southeast Asian aesthetics and a vibrant papier-mâché art style. In this game, players are weretigers who must defend their village from escalating threats under the light of a shifting moon.
Each round, players will roll dice and assign them to various actions that include revealing and attacking threat tokens, gaining XP in order to unlock additional dice, activating villagers' abilities, and even recruiting villagers to join their cause. Players can also build traps and defensive walls to keep enemies at bay. However, the moon deck is both dangerous and unpredictable, so in order to win, players will need to survive until the final moon card is revealed.
Now, we actually have a full playthrough video scheduled for this game, so if you'd like to see it in action, the link to the video will be in a pinned comment down below as soon as it's live. Otherwise, for more information regarding the game as well as the campaign, feel free to follow the link in the description below.
And thank you so much to Sordain Publishing for helping sponsor this segment. All right, thank you so much for that. Now, these 4 games that we are going to talk about were sent to us by the respective publisher for review, so just be aware of that. Now, let's go ahead and talk about these 4 games. The first one we want to talk about actually came out last year, but we had anticipated it, I think, back in 2023. I want to say we put it on a most anticipated list going into last year.
We did, because it is a follow-up of sorts from a previous game of a similar name. So
this is Jekyll and Hyde
such introduction.
versus Scotland Yard.
Yes.
This is a 2-player only trick-taking game, but
fully cooperative.
So this is based off of the Jekyll versus Hyde game, which we both really enjoyed as a 2-player head-to-head trick-taking game. And so this kind of is in the same line, I guess, of games, but now it's a cooperative game.
Yes.
This one is designed by Olivier Sipieri as well as G. O'Neill, and published by 25th Century Games here in the United States.
Yes. So it's sort of a combination between 2 games of sorts. Jekyll versus Hyde, which is the 2-player only competitive trick-taking game that we were mentioning. Really enjoyed that one. It felt thematic in the sense that one player is Jekyll, the other one is Hyde, and you have a different sort of win condition. Scotland Yard is a classic game of sorts where you are trying to, it's a hidden movement game. And so it's sort of a play on those 2 titles, I think. Or maybe it's just a play on both themes. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
That's kind of just how I interpreted it. But basically in this game, this is a fully cooperative game where basically both players will win if you can outrun Scotland Yard and get to the end of the board by the 2nd round. So it's played over the course of 2 rounds.
Yep.
Now, there are several different chapters that the game comes with. The first 3 chapters are sort of like the tutorial. Chapter 4 is a standard game, and then 5 through 10 are like extra challenges that you can play. Although the game is quite difficult.
It is hard.
So just to let you know, we didn't really get to dive too deep into these 5 through 10 chapters.
We were having a lot of trouble just winning chapter 4.
We were.
Yeah.
But we did win it eventually.
We did.
And so the way the game works is one player plays as Dr. Jekyll, the other one plays as Mr. Hyde. And the game has a total of 3 suits, just like in the original game, and each suit is numbered 1 through 8.
Yep.
Now, each round is split into 2 phases. There's a night phase where each player is given a hand of cards, and then we have to secretly choose 4 cards to give to the city. And the city is like the third, not neutral, but also neutral player. Like, it is the AI that we're sort of going up against.
Yeah, and like, because this is a 2-player only game, you will always build out this AI, Scotland Yard's deck, basically.
It's the city. It's not necessarily Scotland Yard. And then 4 cards from the deck are just taken out, so you can't perfectly card count. Now, the thing is, if you have any 8s, which are the highest value of the suits, they must go to the city. So you know you're going to be giving the city some very strong cards.
Yep.
Then once that's done, you go into the day phase where it's a standard trick-taking game in the sense that somebody plays a card, and at the end of the hand, the player who played the most valuable card wins the trick. But the twist here, though, is the definition of most valuable. Now, there's going to be a ranking system for the different suits in the game, and I think that is also from the original.
The strength of suit, yep.
The first time a colored card is played, that suit, that color, will go to the very bottom of the the ranking. So it is now the weakest suit. Now, just like in a standard trick-taking game, if you don't have that suit, it is a must-follow game.
Yep.
So you have to play a card of the same suit if you can. But if you don't have that suit, you can play any other suit. And as soon as a second color is introduced, then that becomes the middle tier.
The second value.
And then the third color is automatically the strongest suit. So even if you played off suit because you didn't have a card of the leading color, you could still win the trick because you happen to play the most valuable of the colors.
Yeah, because there's not like a trump suit like some other trick-taking games.
Right.
It's just the strength will be determined as you play over the course of the round.
Now, the other thing is the deck of cards also has these potion cards, and these are suitless. So anytime a potion card is played consecutively, either before or after a color card, then its effect triggers, and the potion basically takes the suit of whatever that color card was.
Yeah, so
And
if it
that's-
was like the blue and you're using the potion, then you can actually rearrange the strength of the different tokens or
Yes.
the different suits in the particular round.
Right, because what I was going to say is each suit has its own power. So that's why it's important not only because it determines the effect of the potion, but also because it determines the strength of the card at the end of the hand. And like Naveen was mentioning, these effects are going to be like the blue one requires you actually to rearrange the colors on that hierarchy. These are not optional. When you trigger an effect, you have to do it. And keep in mind that the effect can be triggered by the city, because there's a turn order of sorts. You have to follow the turn order, and the city actually always goes first to start the entire round. One of the other effects allows you to switch cards from the top of the city's deck, because you know that the city, the likelihood of the city having really strong cards is much higher.
Yeah, because you have to give away all your 8s that you start the night phase with. So you're never going to start with 8s in your hand.
Right. And this could be good or bad, as you'll see. And then the other effect allows you to take the last trick that the city won. Now, the reason why taking tricks is not always ideal is because at the end of the round, once we played out our entire hands, we are going to count up how many 8s we've won. We're also going to count up how many tricks each player has won, because whoever won the fewer amount of tricks, the number of tricks they won is the number of steps our pawn will move on this board.
Yeah, because we have this board and we're trying to get to the end by the end of the second round.
Yes.
So you want to balance with your teammate having an equal number of tricks. So if I won 3 and you won 3, then we both know that we are going to move at least 3 spaces.
Yes. However, you have to make it to the exact last space, because any additional spaces that you have to move past that space, you actually move Scotland Yard. And that is where the Scotland Yard aspect of this game comes into play.
They're coming after us.
Depending on which chapter you're playing, the rules for winning and losing will be different. In the standard game, if Scotland Yard either reaches our space or passes us, then obviously we lose. And also, if you don't reach the end of the track before the end of the second round, you also lose. But the other thing is, for any of the 1s and 2s and 3s, sorry, 1s, 2s, and 3s that any of us have won, Scotland Yard also moves up a step.
Yeah, there's a little like Scotland Yard like police symbol on the very top, and that's how you know that like you want to avoid these tricks that comprise of the 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Yes.
Anything that's on our side, meaning our 1 tricks, we are going to then move the Scotland Yard pawn towards us. So you really want to balance how many tricks we each win. You want to somehow try to find a way to win the 8s based off of the hierarchy, because maybe red is the lowest, and the I guess we didn't say this, but when it's the AI or the city's turn to take an action, they're just going to flip over a shuffled deck of cards. So they're not going to have to follow or anything like that. So sometimes you can maybe try to get an 8 because of the hierarchy of the different values of the different suits.
And their entire deck is made from cards that we chose. So if you can remember which 4 cards you contributed, you know half of their deck. So it's really interesting. And we're also obviously trying to avoid taking those 1s, 2s, and 3s. So it's this big game of balance. It's really interesting because there is no trump. So it really just depends on how we play the different colors, when we activate the potion effects, because obviously you're not going to be giving the city your potion cards unless you're playing some of the later chapters. And it's a big puzzle. It's a big puzzly cooperative trick-taking game for 2 players. It's really good. I really, really like it.
There's also no communication until you get to the point where you're playing a potion, you're resolving the potion. But you have to be very like on point about what you're discussing at that moment. You can't be like, hey, we need to win a blue. But you could say, I think blue should be the highest value now at this point.
Yes,
You know,
that's
something
true.
like that.
Or like, who wants to take the card? Because one of the potions is the taking of the top card. Maybe Naveen is playing next, so he will exchange a card from his hand, and maybe the city is going to go third, so you can kind of set up that trick, knowing what we need to win.
Yeah, because again, you're just going to flip over the top card. So I think that's the white potion effect. So I can take their card. Maybe I took an 8. I can exchange it with a really bad card, put it on top of there because I really need for me to win the very next trick.
Right.
Something like that. So that's the puzzle aspect of it. Is
Yeah.
when do you use the potion? How do you get the right values, and how do you maintain the ability to win tricks? But then you don't want to be the only one winning the tricks.
Yes.
Because then the person that's your teammate, if they only win one trick, you're only moving your pawn one space. So
Right.
there's a lot of things to consider in such a small game.
Yeah, it's so interesting. It's very goal driven without actually having goals. You know, you play fully cooperative trick taking games, and they're usually set up in a way where it's like the goals are laid out for you. It's like somebody has to win a 5, or
Kind of like the crew.
Yeah, the crew, and which I really, really enjoy. So keep that in mind. There's a bit of a bias here because I actually really, really like cooperative trick-taking games. I think it's a really interesting way to play trick-taking.
Sure, yeah.
But with this, there are no explicit goals besides the fact that you have this race that you're trying to get to the end of the board. But you know that during the round, we're trying to figure out as we win tricks, like, okay, I've won 3 tricks. Naveen, you need to win 3 more. So that
Yeah,
is our
like,
next goal.
I
Get
need
him to win more
I need
tricks.
to switch everything. Like I need blues to not be so valuable because
Yes.
I have no blues. I'm just going to get trounced on this. So
Right.
But I do have this potion, so I'm waiting for somebody to play the blue so that I can use the potion, so I can switch it around
Exactly.
and have enough tricks or opportunity or turns or hands
Yeah.
to actually win some of the tricks. So it's a very, very clever game.
It's really clever, really interesting, very difficult. But I like that there are also different modes of play. Like they're not necessarily modes of play, but if you feel like chapter 4 is too difficult and you play chapters 1 through 3, you kind of build up to it. There are different challenges per chapter too that you can sort of incorporate if you want to do that, or you can just do what we did and just play the standard game over and over and over again until we want something. I will say, though, that in the original Jekyll versus Hyde, the Jekyll and Hyde aspect was more thematic.
Yes.
In this game, you're sort of just choosing a character. I feel like that aspect of it was
I think
sort
that
of
the
lost.
only like part of the theme here is like after like all the hands have been played and you're actually moving, and it's like Scotland Yard's after you. You got to get away. But that one is more the original one, the competitive one. It's like there's this like tug of war, like
Yeah.
internal struggle between
Yes.
Jekyll and Hyde. This one you don't really feel that.
Yeah, you're just choosing 2 characters,
trick-taking game,
basically.
yeah.
Also, the turn order mechanism can sometimes be a little confusing. Like, we have to give pause every time we're like, wait, whose turn is it? Because you basically flip a token that shows either Jekyll or Hyde, and the city will always go first, and whoever's face up on that token goes next.
Right.
And that changes in the second round. So you always have to kind of be mindful of like, wait, who was supposed to go next after that?
Yeah, it's
'Cause
kind of
obviously we're in a
like
triangle.
clockwise versus counterclockwise. Yeah.
But other than that, I really, really loved it. This is
Same.
definitely going into our now ever-growing trick-taking game collection.
Yep.
But I actually like this one more than the original Jekyll versus Hyde. That one I found, there were some split opinions as to which character won more. For some reason, I don't remember now which one I thought it was, but
Yeah.
whenever we played, I always thought like when you're this character, it's much easier to win in Jekyll versus Hyde.
Yeah, and that one, it's like one character wants there to be almost like an even amount of tricks won, and then one character wants a trouncing.
Yeah, something like that.
And
like
that's how
thematic.
you create the separation between turning into Jekyll or turning into Hyde or staying as Jekyll. This one, I would say it's right on par. I don't know which one I like better. I like both of them for their own kind of uniqueness. I do like the fact that we're playing against each other, and like every single card that is being played in the original game is meaningful. This one, technically, like the AI or the robot of the city is just going to flip over a card.
That's
and
true.
It just kind of is what it is. But
it's the cards that you give them.
it is the cards that you give them.
Interesting.
And because there are 3 suits times 3 of those like bad helmet symbols on there, like you're thinking like
The first 3.
the ones,
2,
2s, and
3,
3s,
yeah.
you're like, I can't just hold on to all these 1s, 2s, and 3s.
Yeah.
Because then I'm not going to win any tricks. And
Right.
That's bad. So I have to give them
Yes.
some of them, but
Yeah.
which ones do I give them? So there is still like that decision making in there that is clever.
Yeah.
So when they finally reveal and you're like, I really need to win a trick, and you see that it's a 1 that they've played, and you're like, all right, so if I win this trick, we're going to move, but they're also going to move. Okay.
Yeah.
So it is clever in that sense, but
Right.
it's still just an AI deck that's getting flipped over.
Yeah, to Naveen's point, there is aspects of that. Even though we are the ones giving them the cards, there are aspects of that are out of your control because you don't know the timing of when the card is going to come out. So there are some times where it's like, well, we couldn't have planned for that, right?
Yeah.
And that does happen. But I think it's so interesting just trying to get out of those holes.
Yeah, it creates a puzzle as it kind of
goes.
exposes itself. So it is its own unique game, and you cannot play with the original components for this.
Oh, there's
I
totally
believe
different.
the original components is only 1 through 6. This is 1 through 8.
Oh,
From my understanding,
I cannot confirm.
I think I remember. 'Cause
I don't remember that.
Maybe it's 1 through 7. I don't remember, but definitely doesn't go up to 8 in the competitive game.
Well, there you go. That is Jekyll and Hyde versus Scotland Yard. My final consensus is I absolutely loved it.
Excellent.
Going into our collection.
Yeah.
Love these trick takers that are coming out. Lone Wolves was such a big hit for us, and now
Yeah.
this one.
Oh, anybody that has a question, you will only play as Jekyll and Hyde. You will never play as Scotland Yard
Right.
going after Jekyll and Hyde.
Right.
You are just one-sided here.
All right, moving on to the next game. This is going to be the tiniest box of today's video, and it is another 2-player. It's actually 1 or 2-player game, but we have only played it at 2.
Yep.
And it is called Solstis.
Solstis.
So this tiny, cute art game is designed by Bruno Cathala and Corentin Librat, and it's published by Hachette Board Games. And just like the image at the front suggests, the theme of the game is we are trying to climb up a mountain. I think it's a rite of passage within this world.
Okay.
And it always occurs during the summer solstice. So as cute as this design is, it's actually a trickier game than it looks. Now, it is still a small box game that plays quickly, so in about 15 minutes,
That's what it
which
says,
is about right.
About right.
And it's actually a tile laying game. So in this game, there is this mountain, this journey up a mountain that we are trying to go up on. And it's actually laid out as a panorama. This panorama image has 6 different layers. Some layers have up to 10 tiles, and when you go further up the mountain, there are fewer and fewer tiles that are part of that row.
Yep.
And each tile is unique. So over the course of the game, we are basically trying to take tiles from the display and play them into our own panorama to make enough of this mountain so that we can, thematically go up the journey and score the most amount of points. There are also spirit tokens that you'll sort of encounter along the way, but it is both simple and complicated in a way. So the way the game works is each player starts with a hand of tiles, I believe 3 tiles.
I think so, yep.
And there's also a display in the center of the table. It's going to be 6 face-down tiles with 6 face-up tiles on top of them.
Yep.
So basically 6 pairs. And on your turn, you're going to choose one of the tiles from your hand to play to basically compare to the display. And each tile is going to have a color and a number. And that basically tells you exactly what position in that whole panorama picture that tile is from.
Yeah, because like the bottom row might be red, the next row is all greens. I don't remember the exact order of the colors, but
Yeah.
so every single tile is unique. And so
Yes.
whenever you are going to put something into your panorama, it will go in the relative position as if you were building out the entire mountain.
While you're comparing your tile to the market, you're going to see which tiles in the market are either the same color or the same number, because those are the tiles that you're allowed to take. If there are many, then I choose which one I want to take. And I would take both the tile from the display as well as the tile that I played and place them both into my panorama,
Yeah,
building
so-
out this scene.
So if you played like the 7 red and there was a 7 green out there, then you can take that because they're both 7s and then
Yes.
put them and stack them on top of each other because it's like red, green, and so
Depending
on
on
and so
what the actual order of the colors is. Of course, these tiles are unique. So that means now the tiles that I placed into my display
I
are
will never
never
get them.
going to
No.
go into Naveen's display,
Right.
which might be a problem or not, depending on which tiles you actually have going on for you. One of the things that you're trying to do is you're trying to form a cluster of tiles. You want your tiles to be grouped together because at the end of the game, you'll score 1 point per tile that are in your largest cluster of tiles. So you definitely don't want to have like a super...
You don't want to be all sparse all over the place. Yeah.
You want to try to build as much of this panorama as you can. Anytime you make a 2x2, which is basically a square, then you also attract a spirit animal token, and there are a ton of these animal tokens in the game. Some of them give you endgame points, some of them give you immediate effects. You basically draw the top two from the stack, you choose one to keep, and the other one goes face up into the display. And now, from now on, whenever a player gains another spirit tile, they can either take from the face down display or just take one of the ones that are face up.
Yeah, so you have some, I guess, choice
Yeah.
whenever you make a 2x2, a
Right.
perfect 2x2. You could take the one that you actually know, or you can just kind of gamble and take two that are face down.
Yes, and there is a mean spirit tile, by the way.
There is one
it's
in there.
kind of like a hot potato mechanic that you don't
Yeah.
have to play with. It's red, so just keep that in mind. Now, the other thing that we didn't mention is if you go and you play a tile compared to the display and you don't have any legal possible tiles to take, then you actually put your tile into the display. So that is one of the main ways in which the display continues to grow tiles. And you have what's called a second chance. You draw a tile from the top of the draw deck, and then you do the same thing. You're taking a chance with a tile that was not in your hand.
Yeah, and then you'll compare it to the entire display.
Right.
If something matches, then you can go ahead and take those two and put them into your panorama.
Yes. If for a second time it doesn't match, then that goes into the display and you get what is called a rainbow tile. They have actual rainbows on them. And these tiles are actually quite nice because you can place them anywhere in your panorama.
They act like a wild.
They act like a wild. They just don't score you a point at the end of the game, but they are nice for being able to
Bridge.
attract the spirit tokens.
Yeah, you could put them in a 2x2 grid to get the spirit token. Or if you're like, I will never get this 6 red,
Yeah.
and I absolutely need the 6 red, but Monique has it. This rainbow can create that junction for me so I can get my 5 and my 7 red to actually connect.
Yes.
Or whatever I'm trying to get done in my particular tableau.
Yeah, so you might actually try to get those because they're quite versatile. If in the future you do get the tile that's supposed to go in that spot, then as long as there are no spirit tokens on top of that 4x4, then you can relocate the rainbow tile.
Right.
So they're very, very useful in that sense. Another reason why is because at the end of the game, the topmost tiles, the topmost row, they all have fire symbols on them. And they will score you a point if you are able to trace a path between that tile and the very bottom row of the mountain, which is the red colored
yeah.
row. It's considered to be lit, and you'll score a point for that tile. And so that's why rainbow tiles could be useful, because maybe I don't have.
Yep.
That happens quite often, where
Yep.
you're missing just this like one, because diagonals don't count. You
Yeah,
have to have
everything's
a-
orthogonal. Nothing
Yeah.
diagonal is not considered adjacent.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's essentially it. As soon as neither player is able to legally capture a tile, then the game ends immediately, and you basically score at the end of the game for those 3 things: your largest cluster of tiles, your lit fire icons, and any spirit tokens at the end of the game, because they each give you a set number of points, I believe.
Yes.
And then some of them have end game scoring. So it is very simple. It plays very quickly. It's simple yet a little complicated, because to tell you the truth, I read the rules and it took me a little bit to really figure out how to play this game.
To go from words to actually like game on table.
Yeah,
okay.
that procedure of like capturing a tile and then realizing like what exactly it's trying to get us to
Yeah.
do, and realizing that it's not going to be that simple.
No,
It was actually a little bit complicated.
So the way you set up the game with the 6 tiles face down with 6 on top of them all face up, early on you're gonna make matches, right? Like, I'm gonna play this red, there's a red in the display.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah.
play an 8, there's an 8 in the display. But as you start to dwindle down, you don't actually refill the display just from the
Right.
deck. The only way you refill is if you cannot actually make a match.
Yeah.
That's gonna now go into the display.
second chance.
So over time, that 12 tiles that are out there are just gonna get whittled down, and you're like, I don't see any greens, and all I'm holding is greens in my hand.
Yeah.
Like, how am I gonna get these into play? And these are so perfect. It's like 6, 7, 8. I need to be able to make this happen. But then
Yeah,
now you're
right.
gonna lose it, and so there's a lot of like, I guess like taking your chance. There's some push
There
your luck
is.
on it, but it's still enjoyable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually, I find it to be a bit strange because it looks like a cute, relaxing game. You know, usually when you see a game with this kind of art and like it plays 15 minutes, it's usually like a casual tiling. But this one is oddly strategic, where you kind of have to roll with the punches, and like you have to figure out opportunities for yourself, especially in the late game.
Which tile to draft? It's like I have these 3 options. Every single one of these matches up with something like
Right.
that. But what's a realistic thing that I can try to do
Or how
to try
can
to put it 2
how can
by
I try
2?
to push a rainbow tile?
Yeah.
Or like which of the spirit tiles am I going to add to my area?
And you also want to be aware of what your opponent is doing.
Yeah.
Because if like, wait, Monique has got a lot of the 6s. She's trying to make a straight like 6 bar all the way up. I should probably grab one of those. That way you can't just run away with it. So
Right.
you definitely there is some hate drafting in there because
Yeah.
you don't want your opponent just to completely just take one whole section of the mountain
Mm-hmm.
and be able to make the largest. Because I think you're going to score most of your points from just having the largest cluster. So you got to be aware of as to which tiles you are supposed to draft relative to what your opponent actually has out on the board.
So it's interesting. I like it. I
Yeah.
actually really like the game. I like how quick it is, but how, I don't know, it's like crunchy, but also it's sweet. It's strange. It's a
Nice
strange
little
dynamic,
filler.
right?
It's a good little filler.
It's not difficult.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not as satisfying as you would expect it to be. And I think out of that feeling, you're constantly thinking like, what do I do here?
It's
How
more
can I
it's
make
more
this?
satisfying than you expected it to be, is what you're saying.
I think it's less satisfying.
It's
than
less
I expected it to
satisfying.
be.
Okay.
Because when I play a tiling game, you try to make the complete picture. You're never
like
gonna make
you,
the complete
you
picture.
feel unsatisfied by the fact that you're not going to be able to get it your way.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
not gonna be able to just like bang out all
Yeah.
of these scoring criteria.
Right,
You're
right.
gonna be scraping for these points,
Okay.
basically. Like, I just need a cluster somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, I need to fill in these holes. Like, that's how I feel when I'm playing the game.
There's a tiny little bit of anxiety of like, I've got 3 in this nice window. I just need that one tile to be there.
Right.
And you see it come, and then your opponent has the opportunity and they take it, and you're just like,
And now there are only 3 tiles in the
how am I
market
gonna get
left.
that? Yeah.
Like, the game is going to end very soon, and
Yeah.
I don't have a cluster at all. Like,
Yeah.
that's how some games, that's how it felt. But I imagine the more you play the game, the more strategies, I guess, will open up for you to sort of go around that. And then the spirit tiles, if you can make those 2x2s, which I think is a good goal to go for the first few times you play,
Yeah.
then those spirit tiles can really help.
yeah.
But overall, despite the oddly unsatisfying aspect of the game, I actually really liked it. This is one that I want to play more and more, and I think there's an expansion for it.
I think
I'm not
so.
done exploring the base game, though, for me to feel the need to incorporate that. I think I want to play it more and like really see all the spirit tiles first.
Yep.
But if you're interested in more gameplay, there is that out there.
Yep.
So anyway, that is Solstis.
All right, the next one we want to talk about is another 2-player only game, but this one did come out earlier this year, and it is called Katmai. Now, this one is
Wait,
oh.
Katmai, the Bears of Brooks River.
Yes, there are real bears that they kind of model some of the cards after. This is
Yeah.
designed by Peter Ridgway and published by Osprey Games. Now, this is a 2-player only game where there is going to be a river out in front, and the ultimate goal is to have your bears eat the most amount of fish by the end of the game.
Yes, the theme of this game is modeled after real life. There are bears in the Alaskan region who are trying to prepare for hibernation by trying to eat as much salmon as possible. And so these are brown bears, and thematically, or I guess in real life, the stronger the bear, usually the
better the river spot they get.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there are bears who are also highly skilled. They might not be the strongest bears, but they are highly skilled. And
Cunning bears.
They have other tools in their tool belt to
Yes.
be able to catch these fish. Maybe they're great at diving. So it's not just about being the strongest bear. You also want to use your actions wisely.
Yeah.
So the way the game works is, like Naveen was mentioning, there is a river in the center. It's comprised of several tiles. They're double-sided, by the way. And each tile has 4 quadrants on them, and each quadrant has like a specific feature of the river.
Right.
Maybe it's shallow water.
Or a
maybe
waterfall.
there's a waterfall. Maybe there's a one of these things.
Like an eddy.
An eddy, yeah.
Or a rock.
Or a rock.
So there's going to be some sort of feature in each of the quadrants.
Right. And like Naveen was mentioning, this is a 2-player only game. So each player has their own deck of cards, their own deck of
12
brown
cards.
bears.
Yeah, you
12
have
cards.
12 cards.
One is Sandy and the other one is Cinnamon. So I think these are real bears, which I thought was really cute.
Yes, that's what they said.
One is like a lighter brown and the other one's a darker brown, basically. But I believe the decks are identical.
I think they're identical in the abilities. So, like, we have a balanced deck, but it's one of those games where you take your 12 cards at the start of the round,
Yes.
shuffle them up, and put out 2 cards.
Yeah,
And then
right.
you'll only have so many cards in your hand when making a decision as to which card to play.
Right. And by the way, this is a 30-minute game. So it's not supposed to be a very long game, but it is a card-driven sort of tactical game in that sense.
Very tactical.
Now, each round is split into 4 phases. The first phase is where you sort of ready your deck by discarding the 2 cards, like Nuna was mentioning, so that you cannot card count.
Yes.
And then you set up your starting hand, and you'll always only have a hand of 2 cards. So when you're making your decisions, you're just choosing between 2 bears, which I thought was nice, honestly.
Good, yeah. It eases the burden of the thinking.
Yes. Then you move into the next phase, phase where players are going to be taking turns playing a card to their side of the river. So each sort of tile can only hold up to 3 bear cards of your own character of bear. You can only play 3 cards max to your side of a tile. And when you play a card, you're literally just going to choose an area. And actually, we both do this. It's in turn order, but you play it face down. Then the next player plays their card to any tile on their side of the river face down, and then you simultaneously reveal them. These bear cards have numbers, and some of them also have actions that will either come into play immediately, or maybe they'll come into effect when you're trying to compare the values, because at the end of the day, this game is I believe it's an area majority game.
Yeah, so each bear will have a different set value on it. It could be as low as 0 because it has an ability, or it could be like 4 value points on them. Because at the end of the round or the end of the day, you are going to count up for each tile whoever has the strict majority mathematically.
Yes.
And they are going to have access to putting out their bear meeples. Their beeples onto one of those 4 quadrants of the river
where that tile
is,
Yes. So you basically do this until both players have played out their entire hand. So you're going to play 10 cards each per round. And then once that's done, you go into the scoring phase where you're going to start from one end of the river going down and counting up those majorities. And whoever won gets to place their beeple in any open space of the tile. It does not have to go on your side of the river, which is important because every time we place out a beeple, depending on the mode of play, there are 2 modes of play. There's like the easier game and then the more advanced game. You're going to have a certain number of objectives, either 4 or 6 objectives. And they are going to, this is how you score your salmon. They're going to score you a certain number of salmon tokens that you place on the card if you meet the objective after placing your beeple.
Yeah, so one of the objectives that's a public objective, let's say you're playing with 6 of them, one could be on the same tile and be next to a waterfall space twice.
Yeah, stuff like that.
If you can do it in your turn, let's say you have one bear on the same tile twice next to a waterfall feature, then you get to put out a salmon piece onto that particular objective card so that at the end of the game, you're scoring at least 1 for that.
Yes, because at the end of the game, it's just going to be whoever has the most salmon tokens is going to win the game. Now, if you're playing the easier mode, the objectives, which are all public, by the way, they're going to be more abstract, spatial. They're going to be more like you want to have your bears in this configuration along the river. And you get to score those every time you place a beeple, as long as that newly placed beeple now meets that objective.
Right.
There are about 15 of these cards that come with the game, so you're always going to play with a different configuration of them, I guess. And, some of them are like, for the more advanced game, have a beeple on this specific feature on one side of the river, and then this other feature on the other side of the river. So that is when the different features of the river actually matters.
And again, the only way you actually get your bear meeple out onto the river spaces is by having an area majority at the end of the day.
Yes.
So your placement of your bear cards is very, very important relative to those public objectives, because if you're very, very close to scoring multiple public objectives with just the same bear, then you can try to maximize the amount of fish that one bear is going to get you.
Yeah, so there is a sort of journey that you kind of go along. In the beginning, you're sort of just trying to gain your initial placements. And then as you progress through the game, it gets a little bit more heated as to where you really need to place your beeples.
Yep.
And that is sort of just the basic structure of the game. There are actually other aspects of the game that make it a little bit more strategically complex. There's an initiative aspect where one player starts with the initiative, which allows you to go first. But if you decide that I actually don't want to go first, then before I play my card, I can pass Naveen the initiative, and now he's required to play first.
Right. And then I'll be going first initiative on the very next card to be played, but then I can pass it right back to Monique. So it's not like you have to wait until the end of the day or the end of the round.
But one of the benefits of having initiative is in the case of a tie, there are some cards that have this like mama bear symbol. I forgot what they're actually called now, but it basically represents a mama bear. And if in that tie, in that lane, you both have a mama bear, then in initiative order, you can decide to play out your tiebreaker token, which you can only play once per round.
Yeah.
And then you basically win that
You break
area.
the tie, yeah.
But that's essentially it. The game ends as soon as either one player has basically run away with the game and they have 4 beeples or more already on the board than their opponent.
Yeah, so if like you've played out 7 and I'm lagging behind and I've
Mm-hmm.
only played out like 2 or 3, then it's just like kind of a wash. It's
It
like,
is.
okay,
Well, it's not a
over.
wash. The game ends
Yeah.
immediately after that round, and whoever has the lead
Oh,
wins.
sorry, yes.
But if you get to a point where one player has 0, 1, or 2 beeples left in their supply, then at the end of the round, the game naturally ends, and you get to go into final score and you count up all your salmon tokens.
Yeah, so most of the game, there's like big bears that you can just put out for like a big value.
Yeah.
But a lot of the abilities on the cards is there might be something like move a bear here to a different river spot. So if you know you're getting trounced somewhere and you're like, you know what, this really nice bear, I could really use him somewhere else. I could play this card with its text ability. It says move one of my bears away, or I can move one of my opponent's bears away.
Right.
So a lot of it has to do with kind of like how you utilize just the 2 cards in your hand.
Yeah.
And then also there's going to be an element. What I really appreciate about the game is there's that element of like we both have the same abilities, just about when it actually comes into your hand.
Yes.
And
that
when
is
can you
true.
actually deploy that ability? Because there's times where you're like, Monique early on in a round, like we're both competing over the same area because we know a public objective really wants waterfalls to be a thing. So she's like completely like taking me out of my element over here. She plays a ability that gets one of my really powerful bears to move, and I'm just like, man, I cannot wait until I get that ability back in my hand so I can actually use it against you. So
Right.
It's pretty clever.
So on that note, your strategies will open up the more you play the game
Yes.
because you'll become more acquainted with the cards.
Yeah.
I know the very first time we played, we had a little bit of difficulty about that.
It's a little overwhelming.
It can be a
Yeah.
little overwhelming to just know what can happen and like keeping track of what abilities are already on the table. There are symbols on the cards that sort of allow you to see that at a glance.
To quickly know.
Because
kind of-
as you play several cards to one lane, you're actually going to overlap them. And now the ability that's written out at the bottom is no longer seen. So I know we ran into one situation the very first time we played where I thought I would be able to score one area of the river, but I didn't realize that Naveen had a bear that was like, it takes the power of
was
the
like-
bear above it or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Like it made it so that I was clearly not going to win that.
but strategically, you were
area.
still playing to it. Yeah.
So the more you play it, definitely the more you'll become more acquainted with the actions. You can kind of foresee, well, Naveen still has this other bear possibility in his hand, but there are 12 total bears. So you really kind of just go with what you have.
And by the way,
cards.
of the 12 cards, we did mention that you will discard 2 out of the game, so
Yeah.
there's no card counting. And the round will end once you've played all the cards.
Yes.
So you will play 10 cards on your side of the river, and so will your opponent. And again, you can only play 3 cards to a particular tile every single
Yes,
round.
and I appreciate that restriction. I think that restriction is very strategically sound because you can kind of see, that there's no way that this player is going to win.
It's like, well, Naveen's invested so much into that river spot. Why would I waste my time there now?
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go and just drip, 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 drip on these other
Or
places.
if I really want that spot and Naveen has already played 3, then I know what I need to play to win it.
Yeah.
So the restriction, I think, is good.
Yeah.
If you are like us and you have analysis paralysis when playing 2-player games like this, then it potentially will play longer than 30 minutes. Just keep that in mind.
Ours definitely ran longer than that for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with those public objectives. And it's like you're trying to like, well, in the previous round, I put this bear meeple here. And like in the next round, it's like, actually, that bear meeple does meet that other criteria if I keep going this way. So
Yeah.
how am I going to get my cards here? And that effect is going to move this. There's a lot of thinking that goes on in
you can
every
really
single
overthink.
decision. Yeah.
You can definitely overthink this game.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting. I think it's really well done.
It is, yeah.
It's really clever in the way that you go back and forth with the cards and the fact that it's card driven, but you're trying to meet these like spatial objectives with beeples. And I love the theme.
Yeah.
I think people in the board game space like want to see fresh themes, right? And I've never seen a beeple, I think, that you use this way. That's
bear
not
meeple,
just from
yeah.
like an animal game that features them.
Okay, yeah.
Like maybe that's not true.
Maybe
But
not
I really appreciate the theme.
Yeah.
I love that it's based off of real life. And I think the bears are real.
All the bear cards, apparently, according to the rule book,
Yeah.
are real bears that have been observed in nature, and they've been named by
It's so cute.
I don't know, scientists.
Yeah, they all have names. All of the
Yeah.
cards have names. So when I'm playing them out, it's just really adorable because I
Yeah.
like to say their names while we play them. But anyway, I thought it was solid.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
Two-player only though. So sorry for people who don't play two-player. Two-player players are eating really well right now.
They are, just like these bears.
Yes.
I like the shape of this box, by the way. Like, on a Calyx where you have that little sliver above a bunch of boards stacked. You can just slide it in there.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Really appreciate the form factor on this particular one. Doesn't take up too much space, nice and thin. Plays really, really well. Again, for us, like for me at least, I have a ton of AP playing it, but I did enjoy my play.
Yeah, Naveen is not on the spatial gaming kind of train.
Like the simple, have a bear on an eddy on one side of the river and have one on the waterfall on the other side.
Yeah.
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah.
But make sure it's in this configuration. It's like, well, I set that up kind of.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, how am I going to get that
Yeah,
done?
the easier game objectives are like, you can't have a bear in this space. You
Right.
have to have it in this configuration.
Yeah, it's like,
It's
I can
very
do that.
specific.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that is Katmai,
Katmai.
the Bears of Brooks River.
Yep.
All right, moving on to the final game of today's video. This is not a two-player only game. This
No.
is actually a larger big box Euro this time that we've actually been anticipating for a while. This is none other than Black Forest, designed by two designers,
Yes.
Uwe Rosenberg as well as Tito Lorenz.
Yes.
So two designers, not just Uwe Rosenberg, although the initial things that we had heard about the game was that it was a play on Glass Road.
With the wheels.
With the wheels. And this version of the game was published by Capstone Games. Now, if you're not familiar, we did an entire Uwe Rosenberg series where we basically played through as many of his games as possible. It was
Some
extremely
30
long.
plus games.
But we finished
Maybe.
it eventually.
Yeah.
It included all of the big box games, including a game called Glass Road, which was a game that has one of his resource wheel mechanisms that we hadn't seen until that point. That basically you have a resource wheel and there are basic resources and more valuable resources, and the more you gain and more you spend, the wheel moves to automatically make those more valuable resources.
Yep.
At the end of the day, though, Glass Road was a card-driven game. So you would play cards from your hand. There was sort of like a card matching mechanism.
Following mechanism.
A following one where depending on if other players around the table also chose a similar card, then it determined what you can actually do with the card. And then outside of that, you were building buildings in the form of tiles and placing them on your board. So that was Glass Road. Now, this game came out, I think, last year.
Last year. Yep.
And it wasn't super on our radar, I will admit, because we were told that it was basically Glass Road 2.0.
It was on my radar when I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
It was the new Uwe Rosenberg, the big box Uwe Rosenberg, not like a small tiling game. But then when I found out that it was being compared to Glass Road, spoiler alert, Glass Road was not in, when we finally ranked it was not in the higher tier of the ranks for us. It was like more in the mid to lower.
I still like Glass Road.
I still like it, but you have to rank them, right?
Yeah,
So,
but in comparison to the other Uwe Rosenberg games, definitely not my favorite.
So when we heard it had a comparison to Glass Road, it was like, okay, maybe I'm not as interested as if it was compared to maybe like a Feast Road or something.
Right. Now, obviously, keep in mind these are two designers that designed this. We don't want to just give all the credit to Uwe Rosenberg. But whenever a new game comes out, either duly designed or by Uwe Rosenberg just by himself, we always kind of think like, okay, because he's made so many games, which one is it going to be most like? Just so it kind of prepares our mind for like, oh, is it more like the tile laying? Because there are basically a few mechanisms that he tends to innovate on.
Yep.
Like he'll base it off of this. Like Feast for Odin was entirely tile laying and worker placement, I guess, with a huge menu. And then there's
Agricola and Caverna are
the
very
farming.
similar. Yeah.
Yeah. Is this going to be a farming? Is it going to be? And then this one was based off of Glass Road from what we had heard. Now, that is a little bit misleading, I suppose, because there is way more to this game than there was in Glass Road. So in this game, players are traversing an actual board.
Like a town, a city.
Yeah, there's a main board. Each
Or
player
cities,
has
yeah.
their player board that does have the two wheels where you have to manage your resources.
That is very similar to
which
Glass
is
Road. Yep.
very specific to Glass Road. And you also have this entire area of your player area is called your estate, I believe. So you also have another board that is going to house the building tiles You have featured tiles starting on them, such as lakes and forests and such, that you have to
Plains or prairies where you grow food.
that you have to clear off in order to gain wood.
A la Caverna Ora et Labora-ish,
Yeah.
like where you're trying to clear off your little estate so you can build onto it.
So you can build buildings onto it, but also some of the actions that you'll take depend on how many of a specific tile you still have on your board. And that is also, a lot of games feature that, but Glass Road had that definitely. And then the different actions are going to be very similar to Glass Road, where you're gaining resources, you're building buildings in the form of these tiles, which is very much so Glass Road, onto your estates, and you're gaining or clearing off more of these feature tiles. Now, where the game differs is literally everywhere else, because you now have this board, and the board is split into different villages that you are going to be forced to move around in. So on your turn, the turn structure is very simple, and I actually really, really appreciated that about this game.
Yeah.
Because on your turn, you're moving and you're taking an action, and that's it. So movement is either going to be in the same village, which is basically a cluster of tiles on the main board. You can move from one space to a different one, as long as it's unoccupied.
Yep.
Or you can move from a village to a different village. And whenever you do so, you have to pay one of the valuable resources called provisions.
Yeah.
Yes, that's another one that's on your cooking wheel, the right side wheel. And you can go as far as you want. You just have to be able to pay for that. Then when you take an action, your pawn is going to be sitting in between two tiles.
Two tiles, yep.
And you're either going to take the actions of one or both in any order of your choosing. It's as simple as that. And the actions themselves are quite simple. I will say there's a lot of tiles.
There's a lot of tiles spread out over a big board.
Yes. The first time you play the game, it's going to be like, oh my gosh, what do all of these tiles do? But as you become more acquainted with the game, especially if you're familiar with other Uwe Rosenberg titles, then it's pretty straightforward.
Iconography-wise, it's pretty straightforward,
Yeah.
but it's just the icons are spread out between the building boards, between what's on the board, your
Right.
player board, and then another set of building boards.
Yes, it's almost like sensory overload when
Yeah.
you first build this. This can require some setup, I will say,
Yeah.
especially for the ratio of setup to game. But as you play it, you'll get used to the actions more and more. They're going to be just gaining more resources on your board.
Chopping down your forest to clear out to
yes,
get wood. That
exactly.
wood you'll then go to a specific area so you can construct buildings, so that each building has a different criteria for what are the construction goods that need to go in there.
Yes.
So how are you going to get the resources to kind of turn on your wheels, have them at the right time so you can build these different buildings.
Yes, exactly.
Gain animals so those animals
Yeah.
can go into like pens so that
You
they
can
can
gain
score at the end.
You can gain animals this time.
Yep.
Because I don't think you gained animals in Glass Road, right?
I don't think so. No.
And it's very Agricola and Caverna in that sense, where it's only two different types of animals, but you still have to be able to store them. But if you want to score points for them, you have to build a stable. So it's a new type of tile.
Which means you have to clear off some of the space in your terrain
Yes.
to actually house the stables. But how do you go get the stables? You have to move your pawn around to those different cities. One of the elements that we didn't talk about is if an opponent is in the city or the town that you're moving into, you must give them a basic resource.
Yes. So
Yeah.
there is player interaction
There's
in
some
that
player
sense.
interaction,
And
yeah.
it sort of like blocks out village options for you. In a two-player game, you also play with a neutral worker. So you also have to pay them if they're in that situation. And before taking your movement action, you can optionally move one of these tiles. I think it's called the Traveler tile or something. You can relocate it. It's an action tile to any other spot on the board. And that way, I thought that was really interesting because that way you can bring actions to you or away. And the actual Traveler tile itself is useful. It gives you like two of the same resource and everybody else gets one. So it switches places with another tile that's on the board. You just have to pay a resource for it.
Yeah, you might be short those provisions. So you're like, I don't want to have to go town to town to town to get to the action I want.
Yeah.
I will bring that action to me
Yes.
by basically swapping, taking the action, and then hopefully you have enough resources to do what you have to do and then move out to somewhere else.
Something else that is in this game is the ability to complete jobs. So instead of taking those standard actions, you can move to either villages that have a job in it already, or you can move to specific spaces on the board that have jobs. And these are going to help you gain a lot of resources quickly, or just gain you things that you need. Maybe it's feature tiles, or there's a wide variety of these job tiles that come with the
Yeah.
game, and they get placed on specific spots on the board.
And these jobs all have input costs. So like one job could be like turn in 7 brick, like go to this village, turn in 7 brick and get XYZ rewards for doing it. So it kind of gives you a justification for like, well, I have 6 brick. I could make 1 brick and then find my way over there and get this taken care of so that I can use these new resources that converted into something else. So the jobs that come out basically kind of give you a little bit more justification for why you're converting certain resources or trying to make sure you have a certain amount of resources by the time you get to that village.
Right. And to be clear, you're either completing a job or you're taking actions that are in these villages. Outside of that, there's also, I forgot what it's called, but there's also the ability to expand your estate by taking more of these estate tiles that'll score you 2 points each at the end of the game. But they also give you more room to build more buildings. Because the other thing is, in comparison to Glass Road, there are a ton of buildings. I think there's 36. There's 36.
On that left side board, it's like 8 rows times 3?
Yeah, there's like a large
9 rows
building
times
display
3?
and a small one.
Yeah.
I think it's 36, and they're reversible. So you just randomly choose 10 of them to flip to their B side. So it's always like, you always kind of mix it up from game to game.
Yeah.
And then there's also a display for large buildings. So you always play with these 4 large buildings that take up 2 spaces on your board. They're more expensive because they always require 3 glass, which is that really valuable resource that you can only make by moving your
lot
wheel.
of the more valuable buildings are going to have an input cost of glass.
Yeah.
Whether it's 1, 2, or 3 pieces of glass. The most glass you could ever have on your resource wheel is 3.
Yes,
So just be
that's
aware
true.
of that. And any glass you don't spend at the end of the game is converted into 1 victory point.
Each. Right.
Each, yeah. And so these buildings, by the way, they give you abilities. They can give you one-off abilities, or they can give you converting abilities,
Yes.
or end-game scoring criteria. So
Right.
there's a very large amount of them. I will say, if you are going to go into this game, because the board is so big, you have action tiles all over the board, you have buildings all over the place. I highly recommend for your first, maybe even all plays, take a nice picture of each different building like display. That way you just have it on your phone or something when you're playing, so you're not constantly like, hey, what is that one in the second row, second from the
Yeah,
right?
I
How
see
many
what you
how
mean.
many is that? Oh, okay, never mind. What about the one below it? So you have something just so that you can easily reference, zoom
Right.
in, zoom out. That way you're not going to slow down the game.
Especially if you're playing like a 4-player game. In a
Yeah.
2-player game, it's obviously not as bad because they're both laid out. But when you lay out all these components, this is a table hog
Yeah, it
because
is,
of
yeah.
all of those display boards and then your own player boards that can potentially expand.
Yep.
So that's pretty much it, though. Like, I love the duality of like how simple the turn structure is. But also it's option overload because there are a ton of buildings. There are a lot of travelers that you're going to be visiting on, or a lot of villagers on the actual village board that you have to keep in mind. Which combination of actions do I want? What position is that on the board? Can I pay for it? So it has a lot of really interesting decisions.
Managing 2 wheels,
Yes.
because some resources are present on both wheels. So when you gain the resources, you can only gain them all on 1 wheel. So you can't be like, well, if I get 4 coal, I'll take 2 on this wheel, 2 on this wheel. You can't do that. You
Yeah.
have to take it all. So even that is like a decision point.
Yeah. You can spend them on both.
You can spend them on both, yeah. So I could spend 2 from this wheel, 2 from that wheel, but anytime you gain, it's only from 1
From
wheel.
one, yeah.
We play a ton of Uwe Rosenberg games, a lot, and even when the first time I played this, I was like, I have no idea what to do here.
Your first turn.
The first turn, I'm like,
Like,
there's so
place it
many
somewhere.
resources. I know I need to get them all moved so I can get the better resource manufactured on its own automatically.
Right.
Okay, what actions? Like, actions are kind of all over the place. Like, how do I get my meeple here to there? Provisions. Okay, I need to make sure I have provisions.
Right.
And I have to make sure that I can justify giving away a basic resource to one of my opponents if I go and visit their village. So I was very like, give me a second here. Like, this is a little bit too much for me right now.
Yeah.
But as you start to play the game, especially like on plays 2 and 3, it'll all start coming together, especially like I said in that tip. If you take a picture of all the different buildings, now you're like, I really want that building because it has that ability. I need to make sure I get 2 glass, 2 wood, and 2 brick. Perfect. I will find a way to do that,
Yeah, that is an interesting point. It is, because it's option overload, it's really hard to focus initially on what you need to do first, because just like Glass Road, it's not a high scoring game. Like, I think scores are going to be like average 50 or below.
Yeah, 40.
Around that. It's not like, the other games where it's like 100 something points, like a Feast for Odin or something.
I was trying to look online, like what people were saying about their scores after we played it, and it was all like solo scores. So it's like hard to
Yeah, it plays solo.
Yeah.
It plays solo, and I imagine I have not played it
haven't played
solo,
solo, yeah.
but I would be interested in hearing what your thoughts are if you have played it.
Mm-hmm.
I think this plays really well at 2. First of all, I really, really, really like this game.
Same.
I was so sold. The first time you played it, I was like, wow, this game is great. Like, even with everything that we said, how overwhelming it could feel, how you really need to be familiar over time, with the different actions, the different buildings, etc., so that you can really know what to do. It was really fun. This is the game that I wanted, I think, without even knowing it when I played it. But I think this is what I wanted the Glass Road experience to be.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Glass Road was fine, and I really enjoyed the wheel more than anything else. And the buildings, I guess, getting the building tiles.
I like the follow mechanism also in that one.
I thought that was just okay, the follow mechanism. So that's the thing. If you really like Glass Road for that, then you might be missing that in this game because it's not there are no cards. It's not a card-driven game.
No.
So they completely went in a different direction, these two designers. So this is a board where you're going around and you have visual actions, and it doesn't matter what your opponents are doing. So I think people like that about Glass Road because of the player interaction. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to be in this game.
There's player interaction in the sense that like you're competing over the same buildings, like just like any other Euro, but not like direct, like I played this card and you also did, so therefore we're both going to get a benefit.
Right. It is more though along the lines of you're building out your own area. Nobody else can really do anything about it. And the player interaction really comes in when you have to pay them resources by placing out onto the board, as well as when you take that traveler action, you gain two resources. And everybody else gets one. Other than that, you really don't interact. You compete for jobs because the jobs, there's only about 3 of them really at any given time, depending on player count on the board.
You compete for jobs, you compete for buildings. There's also, especially in a 2-player game, you get to move that the third player marker. And if Monique is like, he's going to go chop wood. I'm going to go put this in the place where you have to clear out your forest. Now you have to pay him.
Yeah.
You have to pay the bank. So there is a little bit of that. You can slow your opponent down just a little bit by forcing them to pay. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this one, even though I did mention like the overload with so much icons and like not know where to go. After my first play of it, I was like, okay, I definitely see like what you need to do. You need to get those buildings. You need to make good use of those buildings. Also, you need to be able to get your animals. And then also put them in pens so that you can score. So there's a lot of different little things that you can do in this game. And the fact that there are so many different buildings to explore, it just gives you more variety for the next plays.
Yes, and you can flip them over. You randomly flip over 10 of them.
Yep.
Now also keep in mind, this is not a very long game, which I really liked about it because, Uwe Rosenberg is sometimes known for long games, although his games specifically range really. Some of them are really long. Some of them are not that long at all.
It says 60 to 120, and this is going to be player dependent. 2-player game will be shorter, followed by 3, then 4. Yeah.
But for the experience, like you're feeling like you're going to build up this big thing, and it just ends sooner than you think. Because the way that the game ends, on your cooking wheel, there's a specific area that's marked, and basically as soon as 1 or 2 of your provisions markers reaches that spot, that triggers the end of the game, and each player gets one last turn, including the player who triggered it. So that's going to be really dependent on how much people are making resources. The first time we played the game, I think I pushed up on that wheel a lot.
I think you did it a little faster than
I was also very paranoid because if you cannot take an action on your turn, then on your turn you're basically just going to go begging, which is placing your worker in the middle of the village and gaining 1 provision. Yeah. And I never wanted that to happen because that's another thing that I liked about this game is it put a lot more pressure on you to have those valuable resources because provisions, you need them in order to move around the board. So you always need to make sure you're making them. And that is the timer of the game. So I kept on pushing up on that wheel so much so that I think I ended the game early.
Yeah. We had pretty close scores. All our scores were within like 5 of each other. So I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fact that you can expand your estate so that you can do different buildings and put them on there. Trying to find your way around the board. So Monique was doing the provision pushing. So I constantly felt like, man, I need to like be very like careful of when I'm spending these provisions so that now I need to call in that tile instead so I can take the action here instead of having to work my way around and kind of take all these different actions along the way. So I really enjoyed it. Also, it's like somewhere in like that mid tier for me. Yeah, it's probably not going to shoot up like to like the top 5 or top 8 of my Uwe Rosenberg games, but it's definitely like right dead center in the middle.
This is definitely one of my favorite that have been released in the past few years. Like, I think before this was at Atiwa. Atiwa was like just Uwe Rosenberg though. And I definitely enjoyed this one much more.
For sure, yeah.
But eventually, I imagine we'll have to redo our entire ranking video and we'll see where this lines up.
Sure.
But otherwise, I would love to hear your thoughts on Black Forest. This was a nice, sort of sweet, Euro-y experience that we were able to sort of go back to after not really playing too many Euro games lately. So anyway, that is Black Forest. Well, there you have it. Those are the 4 games that we wanted to talk about today. All solid games.
Solid 4 games.
Solid
yeah.
4 games.
That's
I
good.
really was really happy about being able to play these games that we enjoyed back to back.
Yeah, for Let's Talk Board
about
Games, like we pick games and
Yeah.
we're like, we are going to play them and we are going to talk about these 4. So it was nice to see 4 in a row that we were
They're like,
choosing
oh, this
for
is
this. Like,
solid.
good,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's
So-
great. Otherwise, thank you all so much for watching the video. Now, if you've played any of these games, please let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. Specifically for Black Forest, I'm very intrigued to know what the community thinks about that game. Going into it, I try to avoid any kind of like reviews ahead of time.
Yeah.
Like normal. So now I'm want to digest what everybody else's opinion is of that game.
Yeah, and if you played solo,
Yes,
let us know
yes.
your thoughts as
also,
well.
yeah, because Monique does like playing some solo games.
Yeah.
Thank you again to Sordain Publishing for helping sponsor this segment. If you are interested in their campaign for Weretigers, there is a link in the description which you can check out. And once again, thank you all so much for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, please consider subscribing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.